All right, so welcome everybody. Welcome to our parent night. Today we will hear a little bit about what changes we can expect in our children as they're entering puberty. My name is Julia Diekmann and I am the PCNC coordinator at WCMS. PCNC stands for Parent Community Networking Center. I will also put my contact info in the chat later. If you need to ever reach me, then please feel to contact me. Our topic today is help, I have a teenager, or how to support your child through puberty. And we have some very great panelists who work directly with all our kids at WCMS and who will share their knowledge and experience with us. And I'm very happy that they all here and agreed to do this this evening. So we have clinical psychologist Sara Fromboluti, school counselor Malieek Cox, and family nurse practitioner Dr. Jessica Scott. Jessica will talk a little bit about the bodily changes in puberty and how you can start a conversation with your kids about that. Sara will walk us through the mental changes occurring while your kids are going through puberty, and Malieek will give some examples and advice for activities and solutions that we can try at home. Welcome everybody, and again, thank you very much for being here. We also have our vice principal here, Serena Cox. She will do a lot of the backstage stuff and also share later like a hands-on presentation on how to set up screen time limits for your kids on your phone. So welcome, Serena. And then lastly, we also have our principal here, Melissa Spetians. She is in the audience. Thank you very much for making this event happen. So first, I have a few housekeeping things. We are using a regular Zoom meeting for this event. Feel free to start your video if you would like to, but please stay muted so that we don't have any distracting background noises. If you would like to ask a question, you can use the chat function on Zoom, or you can also unmute yourself later when we do our Q&A rounds. We are recording this session, so you can go back and watch it again, or maybe share it with others who were not able to join today. I would like to put our chat function to work now. If you could find the chat icon at the bottom of your screen and type where you're joining us from, that would be awesome. You can, can be the town or maybe your ahupua'a or, whatever you want to share. So I'll start. I'm joining from Kalahea. All right, so we have our welcome screen up, and we would like to start with our first panelist, which is Dr. Jessica Scott. She is a family nurse practitioner at KVMH. Welcome, Jessica. And I would like to share a little bit more about her. She is the new Hawaii keiki provider based at Waimea High School and also serves the Kapa'a Kauai Waimea complex area. She has more than 20 years of experience in healthcare with a focus on vulnerable patient population. She holds a PhD in biomedical science, a degree from the University of South Florida, a Master's of Science in Nursing, and a Doctorate of Nursing Practice from University of South Florida. Dr. Scott has a wide range of experience from being a paramedic on a flight crew to practicing in a primary care clinic. Her passion for medical missions has led her to serve in Africa, South America, Haiti, Mexico, Costa Rica, and beyond. Her experience in emergency management, intensive care, and pediatrics has helped shape her focus toward preventative healthcare. She is excited to be a part of the Hawaii keiki team to extend healthcare access to our Kauai complex schools. Jessica, welcome and thank you for being here. I will give you the virtual floor for the first presentation, which is Puberty 101.
Thank you so much, Julia. Can everyone see me? Am I on the screen yet?
Just a moment.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for attending this event. And thank you, Julia, for putting this very fun, awkward, cool experience about puberty so we can get our questions answered. So puberty one-on-one. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. What is puberty? It's a time when a person's body, feelings, relationships change from a child's into an adult's. There are several well-cast videos that help provide a really good resource for basic questions about puberty, healthcare, adolescence, that I really recommend that you try to tap into. You can just look up Wellcast on YouTube, and there's tons of resources for very awkward questions that may be difficult, and you're wondering how to present it to your child. Sometimes it's good just to kind of watch one of these quick little videos. They take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And it's kind of a comical approach to your changing body and the different stages that we go through. And there's all kinds of resources there, everything from noticing depression to what do I do if I think my kid is vaping, to how do I have the talk with them. So I really recommend at least YouTubing it, putting in Wellcast and seeing all of that great information. That's can be a great resource. Okay, so let's go right into one of the Wellcast videos. We have a one for girls and one for boys. So they're both really short. They're about 4 minutes on the changes that girls will go through in puberty.
Did you know that if you live in one of these 10 states in America, you can get solar panels at absolutely no cost?
Hey, Wellcasters. Today we're going to cover puberty from the female perspective. And if you don't know what that means, it might be because you A, haven't gone through puberty yet, or B, you're a boy. So boys, listen up. This is what we're about to cover. Our periods, pubic hair, your boobs, and cellulite. Hang out if you want. Section 1, your period and how to prepare for it. So, somewhere between the ages of 7 and 13, your ovaries start pumping out the hormone estrogen. Essentially, this is to help prepare your body for an eventual pregnancy. Your ovaries are filled with thousands of eggs. Every month until menopause, your body passes an egg from your ovaries through the fallopian tube into the uterus, which, at this point, is lined with blood and extra tissue, which would help nourish and protect a hypothetical baby. But when you're not pregnant, your body spends the next 5 to 7 days getting rid of that stuff, which it doesn't need, and this results in your period. It sounds all really straightforward, but it kind of doesn't feel that way, so be prepared. First of all, your hormones surge, and it can do funny things to your mood. For your very first period, the ladies here at Wellcast suggest that you keep a stash of pads and an extra pair of panties around to avoid any embarrassing accidents, which happened to me a lot. It was really sad. Section 2, while we're on the subject of your nether regions, let's talk about your hair. Wellcasters, if you look real close, you have hair all over your body. The fine, short, vellus hair on your chest, back, and cheeks help regulate temperature and protect from little tiny things. Its cousin, terminal hair, which you find on your head, in your armpits, on other parts of your face, and in the nether regions, is coarser and means to protect. You'll probably be tempted to shave, pluck, or wax unwanted hair. And we've all been there, and some of us have gone a little bit too far. And the good news and the bad news is, guess what? It comes back. Welcome to womanhood. If you so choose, find the hair removal method that's right for you, but make sure that you do your research first on its risks and proper use. Section 3, ouch, my boobs! Tenderness around the nipples and breast area is totally normal as your breasts, fill out. And here's the bad news. They probably won't grow at the same rate as each other. Again, totally normal. You might notice some stretch marks as well if you experience rapid growth, good for you, in your breasts, hips, and thighs. Totally normal. Please don't worry. The stretch marks will fade with time, and I promise your boobs will stop hurting. until you are PMSing, and then they will hurt again. They're going to hurt once a month. Section 4, accept the cellulite. The cottage cheesy look cellulite causes is simply fat living just beneath the skin's surface. As your body grows, you're probably going to notice it a bit, especially around your thighs. But guess what? Most women and girls have cellulite, and it's almost entirely genetic. There's a certain amount of fat your body needs to continue and fully grow and develop into a woman. Think about it this way, ladies. For the rest of your life, your body's going to hang on to fat differently. And the reason is, deep down inside, it's thinking, wait, we might have a baby. Well, ladies of Wellcast, that was fun. Just kidding. I know it wasn't. We here at Wellcast hope you learned a thing or two about your body and your friend's body. And if you feel like the whole world is collapsing in around you, or you feel like an ogre, or you feel like your face has been taken over by this weird disease and you're never going to be attractive ever again, look around you. Every girl that you know is going through the same thing. Meeting adjourned. For more super cool facts about super cool puberty, check out these resources.
Great, so we'll go right into the boys.
So I've got my essay written, and I've been working on it for about a week. So now I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly to edit. Okay, so here's my edit.
Hey, Wellcasters. Fair warning, the following message is intended for pubescent boys. If you saw our first video on puberty, you learned that somewhere between the ages of 9 and 15, weird things start happening to your body and mind. Or you may have noticed this is actually just happening to you. Today, we're going to talk exclusively to the boys on what's happening in your body and how to deal with it. As a side note, ladies, we're working on one of these for you too. I'm sure you're super excited. Tip 1, here's a little secret about zits. You can't scare them into disappearing. Hormones, genetics, dead skin cells, and bacteria are having a party in your pores, and your whole face is invited. Think of squeezing zits like a nosy neighbor threatening to call the cops on a party. It might quiet the storm for a little bit, but as soon as the neighbor leaves, you can be sure the party will flare up again, maybe even louder. Hello, red irritated spots. You're best off washing your face regularly, especially after excessive sweating. But hey, don't wash your face too much, because that could irritate your skin too. Use only water-based hair products that won't drip down your face and clog your pores. Eat consciously so your skin gets the alphabet of vitamins it needs to glow. Pause and print this whole list of amazing foods that'll help you fight acne from the inside. If your skin is especially angry, don't hesitate to consult a dermatologist. It's okay. We all need a little help sometimes. And, you know, dermatologists are like psychiatrists for skin. Tip 2. Hey, can you hear me all the way up there? You're a little taller than the last time we spoke. One of the trickiest parts about puberty is that everyone develops at different rates. The once tallest guy in class suddenly finds himself looking up to girls. And the former class shrimp finds himself hitting his head on doorways. Hello. Here's the thing. The growth spurt part of puberty is kind of a free fall. You can't control your height or how fast you gain it, trust me. But what you can control is your posture. That's right, posture. A solid stance goes a long way to looking cool and composed, even if you're kind of short. It sounds old-fashioned, but seriously, straight, maintain eye contact, and speak clearly. You'll seem way more in control of your body than you actually feel. Tip 3, sperm, testosterone. Oh my! These are the hormones of our lives. And they're exactly what your body starts to produce when puberty kicks off. But as you probably have figured out, the changes aren't just happening inside. You can expect to gain some muscles all over as well as length and girth too. Hooray! You might also be struck with an erection when you least expect it, even in your sleep. And that's okay. These will lessen with time. And listen to me, this is happening to every single boy you know. Tip 4, apply deodorant early and often. We here at Wellcast prefer antiperspirants, which not only mask body odor, but help calm sweat glands to prevent your body from sweating as much in the first place. Look, in puberty, your sweat glands are working in overdrive, especially if you play after school sports or lift weights or whatever. So please carry an extra deodorant in your bag or keep one in your locker if and when you need to reapply. Tip 5, hair everywhere, or not. Facial hair has a mind of its own. Whether the root of your problems is either uncontrollable hair or not enough, you must accept that hair will come and go as it pleases. It's true. Just ask a bald guy who might also have a hairy back. So that's it. Well, for me, not for you. You're still in puberty. We hope you can breathe a little bit more easily knowing that you're not alone. And if you really want this inside scoop into what happens to girls during their teen years, well, stay tuned. We've got one on the way, just for the ladies. Don't worry, we won't tell them that you peaked. And if you need other puberty information resources, check out these sites.
So as you can see, these are fun little videos that are a great segue to open up the door of communication and provide to be an icebreaker. We had questions from parents about what are some good resources to start having those puberty conversations. And these conversations isn't just, oh, I had the talk with my kiddo and I had the talk and now we're done. It's many different conversations that can come up at different times. So I wouldn't recommend parents overwhelm themselves with having to think about every single topic or issue. But as you notice things and notice changes in your child, it's a good opportunity to start up a conversation. And these can be a great resource. Let's move to that next slide. Okay, so a recap, tips and tricks. So growth spurts, yep, we're at that phase where sometimes it happens quick and sometimes it happens later, but by clothes knowing that they may not wear them too long, or giving that they're approaching that preteen, they may not like them for very long either. So acne. Acne is one of those things where we let kids know that it's normal to have breakouts on your skin. We want to promote the good hygiene of face washing, especially after playing a sport or being sweaty all day, that they might need to go home from school and just wash off their face. No oil-based products on the skin. Maybe purchasing an over-the-counter facial cleanser for them to start using. If it does get to a point where you're noticing that the acne is getting a little bit uncontrolled and maybe you have a family history of cystic acne, it's a good idea to go ahead and get it established with a local dermatologist early. So that way you can prevent potential scarring and things from happening so it doesn't get out of hand. Most of the time it's not necessary to have a dermatologist, but there, especially if there's a family history, you might want to consider it if you see it happen early on. Another thing, sweat glands, they mentioned it, deodorant. I recommend practicing making it a routine. This is something that they haven't done in their routine, most likely in elementary school. So now in middle school, it's they might need that first year a little bit of a reminder to, brush your teeth and put on your deodorant before you go out the door. Sometimes throwing one in a gym bag or the backpack so they have it at school because they might forget to put it on even with verbal cues in the morning. And then the under arm hair, manscaping, womenscaping, kids start to experiment. The main thing to really be concerned about is that they're using clean razors. Discuss with them about never using a friend's or another family member's razor, that your razor is a personal item like your toothbrush is. And if using an old razor that needs to be changed out, there's always the risk of getting a staph infection or an abscess in the axillary, the armpit region. So if that does occur, just letting your kiddo know that they need to let you know so you can get them to your healthcare provider. So the genitals start to mature. That's one of those great well-cast videos, or another resource that it's great for parents just to give them that heads up. Just let them know that the body is going to start to change. They're probably already experiencing some changes, and if they know it's going to occur, there's most likely they'll embrace it a little bit more easier. So the breast development. As girls start to fill out a little bit, it's a good idea to buy those sports bras and things that even before they start completely developing, so they can get in the habit. You might notice that they wear them some days and it's very sporadic on when they like to wear them, but they have them available if they start feeling like, oh, I don't like the way I look in this outfit, or I feel like I need a little bit more coverage, they have it available. So sometimes it's nice to have it before the development even occurs. Menstruation for girls, the period begins. It talked about in that well-cast video, creating a little emergency kit, something that they can maybe start carrying in their backpack. Depending on the development of the girl, usually depending on their weight, menstruation is one of those things that generally occurs when a certain weight is reached. So if you notice that, oh, they've gained quite a bit within the last 6 months, it might be a good idea to really start having those talks and let them know the different signs that they can look for in having their first period. Okay, so ovulation begins. That means fertility begins, and pregnancy can occur at this stage. So once they get their period, making the child very aware that they can get pregnant at that stage, and having a family talk about that. Voice may deepen, crack, and sound very funny. And with our boys, we try not to laugh, and we embrace it and just encourage them through this change. And mood and behavior changes. So it's good to talk about what is the normal mood changes versus signs of serious depression. And we'll get into that in just a minute. Also, things that come up at this stage is interest in recreational drugs, just being curious in general. Vaping, smoking. Vaping's I just got some statistics last week from Oahu that 80% of kids in Oahu admit to vaping. And that's just what they admit to on a survey. So it's likely even more than that. So if you think that, oh, not my kid, you might want to look at those statistics and say, most likely it will be my kid. How are we going to make sure that this doesn't happen? So also, if there are medications in your medicine cabinets, this is a time of experimenting, making sure that those narcotic medications are locked up in your home is definitely a must. So let's move to that next slide. Okay, what to look for with depression. So signs that may be normal due to puberty. So moodiness, mood swings, wanting more freedom, testing boundaries, tantrums, looking for more independence. Do not think the parents are cool anymore, not listening to you, stubborn. You might think you have a behavioral health case on your hands. You don't. It's just your child going through puberty, which is can be a bit of a roller coaster. The signs that are a little bit more worrisome are things such as prolonged depressed mood. And we're talking weeks, months, maybe even the entire bit of the last year. Little interest in participating in activities. They used to love playing soccer, they used to love cheering, they used to love playing volleyball, and they just become more isolated. They don't really even have interest in hanging out with their friends anymore or doing the things that used to give them a lot of pleasure. That's something to start being a little bit concerned about. Difficulty in sleeping at night, not being able to stop worrying. And that's a hard, a lot of kids are experiencing that now, especially with the last couple of years of this pandemic. And they're kind of bearing the burden of their parents and the world and the school system. And they're just trying, and they don't feel like they have the ability to really control their environment. So it can cause excessive worrying, feeling anxious, nervous, on edge, feeling afraid as if something awful might happen, feelings of hopelessness, nothing will ever get better, beginning to self-harm, cutting, pulling hair out, constantly chewing on their nails. These are signs where you really need to get some extra help, and go ahead and take them to your PCP, and definitely look into the school counselor. So next slide.
Just a heads up, Jessica, you have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, so tips to properly use pads and dispose. So this is one thing that's a lot of times missed by parents and school staff. It's just that when they first start getting their period is what to do with things. So always remember to let them know to always wash hands before and after applying the pad. Always dispose of the pad in trash, not the toilet. Serious issues can be caused with the toilet backing up. Always check with your parent guardian on the rules of using a pad versus tampon. That would be a family conversation. And next slide. Okay, questions. Where to find resources. It's primarily, the resources start coming from the parents first. Kids need to hear these things from their parents. They need to feel like they can approach their parent when they have a question, and also from their doctor and their Hawaii Keiki school doctor, which they have in-house here at the high school that's available to any kid on the west side and family. So that's it from my end.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was so much great information that you gave. I really enjoyed listening to that. And it's also a good reminder of all the changes that the kids are going through that, you know, we might not be aware of because it happened to us so long ago, right? But it's a really good reminder of all the stuff that's happening to them. So thank you for sharing all this information. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat. I didn't see any. So I had a question here that you kind of already touched on a little bit. What are the normal changes in puberty, and when do I need to seek help? So maybe if you could just recap that.
I'm sorry, say that again, Julia.
So the question that I had is like, and you already shared some of that. What are normal changes in puberty, and when do I need to seek help? So maybe if you could just recap that.
Yeah, so in general, we went through the girls, we went through the boys. We're going to have some genital maturity. We're going to have some mood changes. We're going to have additional hair growth. And so that's when our hormones get started, the pheromones get started. So our sweat glands start to really be active, which weren't active before. So that new routine in the morning time of putting on deodorant is a routine that usually boys need to be reminded of quite often the first couple of years. So with all of these different changes, they're going to happen at different stages for every single kid, but over the next 4 years, it's going to happen.
Right. Awesome. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you again. That was super informative and helpful. And please stay on if there are maybe questions later for you. And with that, we're going to move on to our next panelist, which is Sara Fromboluti. She is the school psychologist or clinical psychologist and has been working in the Kauai school system since 2019. Prior to becoming a psychologist, she was a special education teacher in New York City, specializing in working with students who had diagnoses of autism and emotional behavioral difficulties in underserved communities. Sara, welcome very much. Welcome and thank you very much for being here. You have the virtual floor, and maybe Serena can spotlight her so that we can see her face.
Okay, so hi everybody. There I am.
Oh, there you are. Hi. Hi. Awesome.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm currently the psychologist at Waimea Canyon Middle School. I also, if any of your parents at Kikaha, I'm also the psychologist out there. So this is my email contact information. If you have any questions that come up after this, I'm more than happy to talk story about anything. So the main part of puberty is really discovering our children's and adolescents' own identity, like who they are and who they see themselves as unique individual people. And it's a particularly frustrating process for everybody involved. So if we could head to the next slide. I've broken it down. There's pretty much, it's really, middle school is a particularly terrifying combination of the kind of emotional maturity of children, but like the thinking and emotion and interests and exploration of older adolescents. And it's really a pretty exciting time, but it's also a pretty scary time for everybody involved. It's difficult because, you know, part of being an adult is being an independent person that makes, you know, thought out, reasoned, responsible choices. And, you know, we see ourselves as unique individuals, and that's very different from children. So what we start to see in adolescence is those goals and those motivations that we have in childhood, they start to shift. And it's normal, and it needs to happen in order for us to become, you know, fully realized adults and, you know, functional humans. But the process is pretty challenging for parents and for children. So just a little touchstones that in childhood, really what you know, the body and the education, it's focused on your mental growth, your physical growth, right? Like learning basic skills, you know, gravity works when you drop things. This is what a ladder looks like, right? Whereas in adolescence, we're looking actually more at maturation. So it's less about growth and more about maturing and like using critical thinking skills, some soft skills, you know, problem solving skills. In childhood, parents are the primary source of motivation and reinforcement for most children. They really focus and rely on their parents. And this doesn't change as we get into adolescence, but what does tend to shift is that that motivation becomes a little bit more of a ground floor, and that peers become really the primary source of immediate drive and motivation and reinforcement. And that as a parent is very, very challenging to navigate, but it's also important for adolescents to develop into, fully realized adults. Also, like I touched on, education in childhood is really focused a lot on skill development. Obviously at Waimea Canyon Middle School, we focus a lot on skills as well, but there's also an increased focus on ideas and concepts, how to take the skills that you have and use them to, discover and explore more personal related interests. So adolescence is typically divided into essentially three parts: early, middle, and late. So if we could head to the next slide, I'm going to break them down. Each stage is a little bit different. So the age range here for early adolescence, and that's what we're all heading into, is between 10 to 13. As with physical maturation, this is a time frame that can change depending on child. There's nothing wrong with developing earlier or later, as long as it's within, that range. And youth are starting to see themselves more as unique individuals that are separate and different from their parents. However, their thinking style is going to still be more concrete like a child does. So you will see a lot of black and white thinking, this person is my best friend. Now I hate them. They're horrible, right? Like, you're the greatest mom. You're the greatest dad. You're my enemy. I hate you. I never want to see you again. That sort of walking back and forth is, very challenging, but it's also very normal. We also see an increase in egocentrism. So that's centering themselves in the world around them. It is very normal for youth at this age to think of everything through the lens of their own experience. And this includes increasing self-consciousness and feeling like they're on stage at all times. This is not helped by the fact that their bodies are probably at peak awkwardness with, all of those physical changes that Dr. Scott mentioned earlier. If anybody ever made their parent drop them off 3 blocks away from a school dance so they didn't get seen getting out of their car, that's the feeling, right? The thought that everybody's putting you on stage and everything you're doing is going to be judged. It's typical, and you just need to wait it out. And at this time, youth really want to safely explore independence. They want to start to look into, like, who am I? What do I want to be? What am I interested in? Not necessarily what, have I been doing with my family, or what have I been thinking of, but like, what am I really good at? What am I really interested in? And as I mentioned before, peer relationships and peer approval starts to become a lot more important. And that even can supersede parental approval. It doesn't mean that parental approval and parental support isn't important. I would argue that it means that your parental support is more important, because they essentially need you as a touch pad, right? As they go out, then they want to have that safety to come home to, but they will be testing their limits a little bit more, and having the positive acclaim from their peers is going to become a lot more immediately reinforcing to them. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So after early adolescence is middle adolescence, and this is around 14 to 17. This is where youth have sort of started to think about those personal identities, and now they start to explore them a little bit more. This is typically like high school more so, but for some kids, you might see this in early, towards the end of middle school. So this is when you will also see an increase in arguing, more overt pushback on parental authority. Again, it's normal. It's not enjoyable as a parent, but it is normal for your child at this stage to push back a lot more against rules, or start to try and bargain with, well, I don't, why is my curfew this? My friend's curfews are that. A lot of things like that are very typical. It's developmentally appropriate. They, however, have started on the plus side to get much better problem solving and abstract thinking skills. They will have more difficulty applying them in the moment, but after the fact, after they make a boneheaded decision, they will be a lot better able to talk about what, why things happen that way, or what they might want to do differently next time. And you can also do a lot of talking about them beforehand and prepping things, what if this happens, what could you do? And they can actually think more abstractly and relate their choices to actual consequences, both in, physical things, or, loss of privileges, and also, ways that people see them or react to them. This is also a typical age for kids to start to really explore romantic relationships. So you might start having your child talking to other kids in their class in that way. So just be aware, it's totally typical for this stuff to start happening. Again, peer feedback continues to take precedence over parent feedback, but again, it also, if anything, means that your support is more important, because they are going to be testing those boundaries and testing whether or not you really care about them, even when they're being a jerk. Like, do I still have my parents' support? So it is very important, but incredibly challenging. And so our next slide is late adolescence. This is, I would say, the least horrifying of the adolescent stages, because we have kids, it's essentially around like your senior year of high school until you're in your 20s. This is when we see our youth have really begun to solidify who they are. And unlike in middle adolescence, they can actually use that to inform the way that they act and their choices. They actually look like adults pretty much at this point. It's sad for them because they're not. They might think they are, but they still do have a strong sense of themselves. They will use that sense of individuality to make choices that align with their values and their goals in life. And then they can make better thought out decisions, but again, it's a continual life process. I think learning how to make better thought out decisions in the moment, but you'll see a little bit a decrease in impulsivity and an increase in more rational abstract thinking. And then at this point, they've ideally been able to develop their own sense of identity, and that is when we often see an increase in the satisfaction of the parent-child bond. You can reform a more positive adult relationship with your, now young adult. And a lot of the conflict and that pushing boundaries isn't going to be as significant once they hit late adolescence. This is when we see kids become a lot better able to put their own goals ahead of what they think their friends might want. The salience of peer groups starts to drop off again once we get into late adolescence. So that peak of, having that peers as a motivator in, middle school and early high school starts to drop off again. Peers will continue. I mean, peers are important for all of us, but having your peers think you're cool becomes less important as we get into late adolescence. So that's what you have to look forward to. It ends eventually. So if we go to our next slide, So this is a quote, really, I'm going to focus a little bit more on early adolescence now, because this is early adolescence is middle school. So I included the information for this book. It's pretty old school, but it talks really specifically about early adolescence. So it's available for purchase or to borrow. So across these 5 years, a young person physically develops, progressing from prepubescent youngster with childlike features to somebody with an adult appearance. So too, this period is marked by social and cognitive shifts that set the stage for lifelong capacities and aspirations. Social relationships often expand beyond the family unit to include more peer group influences, and young people begin to acquire behaviors that have a profound impact on their life. So this is from the conceptual framework for early adolescence. It's really looking at how that early adolescent period is where, through all this increased, identity searching and pushback to parental authority, that's actually how children are able to define themselves in really positive pro-social ways by, figuring out what the boundaries are and where they're comfortable with them. If we can go to the next slide. So it's hard though. It's hard for them, and it's hard for us, and it's hard for parents. It's hard for everyone. I don't think most people don't look back on their middle school times as being like this, great, awesome, everything's copacetic, everything's great, right? It's challenging, right? You're basically busting out of your cocoon and becoming the most awkward butterfly and trying to figure out how to fly. And so there are definitely ways that you can help through this. So the first one is you want to help foster decision-making skills, and that means empowerment over compliance, right? So we want to help kids choose to make good choices, as opposed to making choices because it's the expectation of them, because that's the adult thing to do, right? Like we follow societal rules, not just because we don't want to get in trouble, but because we believe that it's the correct thing to do, right? So we want to, and that works on increasing their decision-making skills. And this is going to pay off dividends when they are, hanging out with their friends, and maybe their friends might have an idea that's not so great, right? So you want to be able to foster an open dialogue with your youth as much as possible. That is challenging. Right. And this is also challenging. So you want to try your best to find a way to be non-judgmental while still holding up consistent and predictable consequences. So what that means is, if your child does something, I'm sorry, my Mother's Day balloons keep flying into this camera. My apologies. So if your child does something that maybe you don't violates a household rule or is more serious, that being able to have a consistent and predictable consequence, right? If you don't do your homework, then you have to do it before you go out on the weekend. Or, if you cut class, then you have to do extra chores, or whatever works for your family. But understand, being able to have a dialogue about it, and understand their motivations. They have legitimate reasons for doing things, even if we don't agree with those reasons, and being able to have a dialogue with them about it is really the best way to help foster those decision-making skills and empower them to make good choices. So we also want to foster emotional and physical safety. So that, again, is clear limits with predictable consequences and follow through. It's a little bit easier when they're in elementary school because they're small and they're more compliant. Little kids are inherently more willing to follow directions. As we start to get into middle and late adolescence, we get a lot of pushback. So as long as the limits are really clear and the consequences are predictable and you follow through with them, then it will make everything a lot more easier, and it helps to foster that emotional and physical safety. Again, having a dialogue with them, it's totally fine to get angry. We all get angry, right? So that goes to the third point here, which is modeling. We model the behavior we want our kids to have. So that means if you make a mistake, we all make mistakes, right? if I make a mistake, if my child makes a mistake, I would want them to be able to acknowledge the mistake, apologize, repair whatever it is, and then do better next time. So I teach them to do that by modeling that behavior myself. If I lose my temper in an argument, I cop to it. I'm sorry, I got really upset. I shouldn't have lost my temper. This is what I want to do. Let's try again. And that's fine. And that being able to model that type of behavior is really, really helpful for young adolescents, for middle schoolers, and for, getting our older adult parents to do things we want to. So we also want to foster engagement while learning. As a parent, you have a really big role in this, because again, we're moving from just straight up skills development to understanding more concepts, right? So we want to help kids engage positively with their learning whenever possible. That includes making connections between school and whatever their goals are, whether the goals are academic or interpersonal, whenever possible, right? It's not always going to be possible. Not every worksheet is going to have a deeply personal meaning that you can connect to it, but whatever your youth is is exploring for themselves, there are ways to help them to make those connections. So we're empowering them to do it and to learn more, as opposed to just facilitating compliance. And then finally, we want to foster a positive sense of self and self-efficacy. So whenever they make a positive step towards independence, we want to celebrate it. Great job, right? Oh, you called your friend and set up a hangout instead of me having to do it for you. Amazing, great job, right? Like, you reached out to your teacher and turned in this late assignment without me having to facilitate it, without them having to nag you. Awesome, right? And help them to see that they actually are very effective, and that they can feel good about themselves, which is really hard when you're going through puberty. So if we could go to the next slide. So here's some more links to read. So this is the early adolescence book, Understanding the 10 to 15-year-old. And then there's a couple of links to some resource sites about the just raising safe kids. And then I also included a free online course about behavior modification techniques. If you really want to go get real intense with behavior modification at your home, they have a little mini course. And it's not necessary for everybody, but if you are really interested, I thought it was helpful. And I believe that's my last slide, but
Yes, I think
yeah,
that was the last
so
slide.
I'm very proud of myself for actually doing it in the time limit.
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you so very much, Sara, for sharing all this information. That was so informative and interesting. I loved listening to all of that, and I think it also made me realize that it's just a normal thing that the kids are going through, right? There's those stages, and it's just something that happens to all of them, and it's just normal, right? And
yes. It is. It's hard. It's hard because we're used to our adorable, sweet little kid that just sees the whole world in us. And then all of a sudden you wake up and it's like this creature has moved into your home and everything you do is stupid. And, and it's awful. It's awful. It's really hard. It's hard for them too, right? All of those feelings that they're projecting on you, they feel themselves, and it is normal. It is unfun for everybody. I also just want to tack on to what Dr. Scott said, is that, if you have, moodiness, pushing away, all of these, horrible things that happen in adolescence are all normal. But when, so it can be hard to identify, to differentiate between what's sort of normal adolescent emotional volatility and a significant health problem. I would say always reach out to your pediatrician, or I believe Stephen Vasquez is going to be the guidance counselor for the 6th grade next year. My email is also included in here. So if you have any concerns, please follow up with any of us. And the criteria that I use when I'm, doing evaluations and diagnosing is really does this affect the individual's ability to function, right? We all get sad. It's normal. You can't live life without getting sad. We all get anxious. A little bit of anxiety or a medium amount of anxiety is, honestly, it's how we motivate to do stuff we don't want to do, or right? It helps us be functional. Nobody's working on like their homework assignment unless they have like a little bit of anxiety about like what happens if I don't turn this in, right? But it's when it starts to become something that limits your ability to function, right? Like you can't go to school because you're so scared about this presentation, or you lose interest. You don't just lose interest in your old childhood things, but you lose interest in all of your things, right? You never want to go out anymore.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing all of this. That was really awesome. Please stay on in case we have some more questions for you later. The only question I saw in the chat was if people can get the slides from today's presentations. Of course, we will send out an email that will include all the slides and also in the information that was shared here, and email addresses on how to contact people. So with that, I would like to move on to our next panelist. We have Malieek Cox here, who is a school counselor at WHS. And we have heard now a lot about the changes, the bodily changes, but and also the mental changes. But now, like, what do we actually do when, we run into situations at home that are kind of difficult to navigate when you have a teenager? And he will share some of those activities and solutions with us. Thank you very much, Malieek, for being here. Maybe a little bit of background for him. Malieek Cox has worked in the mental health profession for over 20 years. He has a bachelor's degree in sociology from South Carolina State University. He obtained his master's degree in mental health counseling from Webster University. And currently he's in the process of obtaining a PhD in transformative social change at Saybrook University. His work experience, he does school-based behavioral counseling, adult and child protective services, and various mental health facilities and private practice. He's currently seeking licensure in the state of Hawaii for mental health counseling. Thank you very much for being here, Malieek, and you have the virtual floor. Maybe Serena can share. Yeah, so there's the first question. The first question that we found is, my teenager is constantly pushing boundaries. What strategies work to guide my child's behavior?
Okay, thank you for having me this evening. Thank you, Dr. Scott and Sarah. So the answers that I'm going to give you are probably going to overlap what Sarah already mentioned, and also what Dr. Scott probably talked about as far as her developmental stages. But I will say personally, I'm what they call a systemic therapist, meaning that I do provide individual therapy with the child or family therapy, but I'm a big believer in community therapy. Everyone is involved, whether it's the parents, whether it's the coaches, whether it's the teachers, principals, etc. I've found that this works not only in my own family, but in other families as well. When everyone is on the same page, it seems to work a lot better. I'm a big believer in behavior contracts. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, but they work. I'm hesitant to put up an example of a behavioral contract because the best ones that work are individualized with that particular family. You can Google them, you can find them all day long, but I would advise you to devise your own behavioral contract when setting consequences or rewards with your family. Like Sarah mentioned earlier, natural consequences, whether that's failing a grade, whether it's not being able to go to the local grocery store, whether it's not being able to go to Fun Factory. Natural consequences are the best, as opposed to us being helicopter parents, whether, no, you don't get to do this. Natural consequences work better. In answering this first particular question, we have to, as parents, we have to remain flexible, no power struggles. When I mean power struggles, kids, they're masters at power struggles. At this particular age, they engage in those verbal power struggles with the parent because they feel as though they can win. So I would advise, whether it's mom, dad, grandmother, whoever's raising the particular child, not to try to engage in those power struggles. It's very difficult. It's difficult for teachers, difficult for counselors, principals, etc., not to engage in a verbal power struggle with the kid. But you just have to maintain calm, and like Sara mentioned earlier, model good behavior. So yeah, I'm a big believer in behavioral contracts. So that's number one, Julia. We can go to number two.
Sure, yes. And I think that goes right in with that one. How do I communicate with my teenager, right? I have a hard time sometimes communicating with them. How can we break the ice as parents?
Yes, I like this particular question because I have a 15-year-old child, and we also have children ages 9, 10, and 11. And all of them are different. So us as parents, we had to show interest into what they're interested in. For example, I had one family where a teenage daughter was interested in BTS. The mom and dad, they hate BTS. But by them showing interest in this particular group, they were able to, quote unquote, break the ice with this particular teenager. They were able to accomplish some goals. Her grades got better, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no magic wand, but some of it is pretty simple. If you just show interest in what your child has interest in, things will go a lot better. Personally, I don't like fashion, but my daughter enjoys fashion and arts or whatever. So she and I both attend as much art stuff as we can. And as a matter of fact, it has improved our relationship. And yeah, it works. If you just show some interest in what your child is interested in, I guarantee that things will be better in regards to behavior.
Okay, that's great advice. That's really great advice. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to know what they're actually interested in, but it's definitely something that we could seek out as parents and try to understand.
Hey, Julia, I got to interject here. I'm sorry. I was trying not to interject. This is Serena Cox. I just want to say, when it talks about getting involved with the interest, when you have your father that sits around and watches Project Runway, because you're trying to watch fashion and be into fashion. So that's a classic example of how to get interested.
Right. Yes.
I agree with that. 100%.
That's a great example. All right. Okay, let's see. The other question we got was, my teenager disregards rules and goes behind my back. How can I set and enforce rules successfully?
Okay, it's pretty much echoing what I said with the first particular question. Natural consequences are key, whether they're grades, you're not being able to attend a prom, you're not being able to attend a ball game. The key is consistency and not give in. I never really agreed with the term good cop, bad cop. Both parents or both whoever's rearing a child are both good. Everyone has the better communication styles. My wife is better at certain things and I'm better at certain things. But at the end of the day, we all on the same page. So we have to be careful of allowing ourselves to be flexible and allowing different people to have different strategies. One thing I found that worked as well, and when it comes to boundaries, again, as a systems therapist, is to have everyone involved. If there is a rule infraction broken, the grandmother knows about it, the football coach knows about it, sometimes the teacher knows about it. And when everyone is on the same page and everyone has maybe even a copy of the behavior contract or what rules and fractions or what rewards are given because of A, B, and C are accomplished, you will be a lot better at the end of the day with that particular teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Thank you, Malieek. The last question that we had was, I feel disrespected by my teenager. How can I encourage good behavior?
Okay, first of all, we have to define what disrespect is. You know, someone may see eye rolling as disrespect, where another family or another parent may see using swear words as disrespect. So again, behavior contract, you have to communicate, like Sara mentioned earlier, you have to have that dialogue. What is disrespect? This is what we tolerate. This is what we don't tolerate. If you do A, B, and C, this is the consequence of it. If you do this, this is a reward of it. It's all about communication, because at this stage of a child's life, vagueness is not your friend. You have to be concrete. Again, disrespect is this, because you may have a child, oh, I didn't know that was being disrespectful. If you have it written or if you have dialogue about it, there is no excuse that they didn't know that slamming the door was disrespectful, or turning the TV on at 5 o'clock in the morning is disrespectful. So you have to have that dialogue. It takes work, but consistency and dialogue is the key to this. Model good behavior. I think Sara mentioned it earlier. We all get angry, we all get sad, we all get happy. We can't expect our child to act a certain way if we don't model what behavior we want exemplified. I get angry, you come back, you use I statements. I was angry that you left the door open. And this is my behavior, it was wrong. So you just have to own up to your own behaviors and model it for the kid. Be open and transparent as much as possible. And yeah, that's it for the last question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Malieek. So basically what you're saying is communication is key, right? What I'm hearing, communication is key to open the dialogue and then have natural consequences for unwanted or undesired behavior, and then also make sure that you are consistent with rules and what you expect from your
Yeah, absolutely. And you're being exemplifying, you know, the term that we call empathy, that you're displaying empathy, you're empathizing what they're feeling by using I statements. You're not attacking, and so they can kind of relate to your feelings and you can relate to those feelings, and that builds bonds when you become transparent. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this with us. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Malieek.
I do have one resource. I didn't put it in the
okay.
There's a particular book called Parenting with Love and Logic. The author is Foster Klein. I went to this training probably 15, 20 years ago, and I still use this personally and also in practicing with families and children.
Okay, that's great. If you shoot me an email with the title and author, I can include it in the follow-up email.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat as well.
Okay, yep, sounds good. All right, and thank you very much, Malieek, for sharing this. We will move on to our last speaker, which is Serena Cox. Serena, I give you the virtual floor, and you can maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself. You're muted.
Sorry, I can't believe that. I'm so sorry. So hi, everyone. My name is Serena Cox. I'm currently the TA Vice Principal at Waimea Canyon Middle School, and I'm very excited to be here with you today. I just want to also kind of give a second shout out to that book, Parenting with Love and Logic. There actually is one called Teaching with Love and Logic as well. And I think one of the biggest things that I also took away, I was also a participant at that conference, or at a conference for Love and Logic, was responding to children very short and sweet, no sarcasm responses, right? Don't get into those sarcastic responses, power battles back and forth. All right, well, I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about screen time. So screen time is just what it is, how much time you get to spend on a screen. That's been very difficult with all of us being here in the virtual world. It's going to take me just a few seconds for me to kind of get set up a little bit, because what I'm going to be actually doing is sharing my phone with you guys, and I'm going to walk you through very quickly just how you can set up screen time for your children and how you can actually limit their ability to communicate and or what you want them to view during the course of a day. So we're going to try to go through this quickly, but I also do have videos for you at the end if you also need to go back into a playback. So if you guys can bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can get some things together because I need to get a little bit set up first so that you can see my phone. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, this might be a good time to just look away from the computer, give your eyes a break, maybe stand up, stretch your legs for a moment. It'd be a good time to do that. And then give me a moment to get this set up. So while you guys are just taking a few moments, I'm going to admit and let someone in. And all right, so I'm going to get this set up so that you are actually going to start seeing my phone as soon as I share my screen with you again. All right, so I'm going to share, and what you should see now is all of you should see actually the front of my phone. You should see a picture of me and my daughter. I'm assuming that's what everyone sees.
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to go to screen time. So the first thing you want to keep in mind is under settings, and we'll go to settings first. So here under settings, before we even get started, in order for you to have your children or your adolescents, however, whatever age they may be, part of your family plan, family sharing plan, is you do have to have a family sharing plan. You can have up to 6 people included in your family sharing plan. So say, for instance, you go out and you buy your child a new iPhone. When they set up their iPhone, you can go into their iPhone and they will ask you, is this a child's phone or an adult phone or your phone? As you set it up or they set up, they should set up as this is a child's phone, and that automatically puts it into a family sharing. Or you can go into the settings and change that to turn on screen time, but you have to be in your child in that actual phone. So if you didn't do it when you purchased the device, you can go back into settings and under open screen time and then change that setting to yes instead of no. That's a little hard for me to show you only because I already have mine set up. But I went into settings, so I'm in my settings mode. You'll see down here at the, oh, I forget, I have to use my phone. See here at screen time. As soon as I turn into screen time, the first thing that you're going to see is you can see up at the top, you'll see screen time settings, Serena Cox. This is actually my information for me, right? So I can even lock myself down if I feel like I'm being challenged with looking at my phone too much. Don't look at the fact that it was 4 hours and 16 minutes because I was practicing today. But I'm going to scroll down and you'll see that underneath family, you'll see that I have my family, my children here, but I'm going to go right in where you can see Malieek Cox. We're going to focus on her screen time today. So I have her set up. She's part of my family sharing. I want to show you, number one, what you can do with screen time, and then how you can go back and look at the activity and see exactly what your child has been viewing or looking at, even down to how much time they've spent on their apps. You can it's even going to tell you when it was the first time they picked their phone up. Are they picking it up at 5 o'clock in the morning, or are they laying it down at 2 o'clock at night? So if I go to Miley, what I can do with Miley is I can schedule her downtime. I can control her app limits. In other words, I can set a time for limits for apps, communication limits. I can control who and when she communicates with. Communication safety is actually something fairly new, but I definitely recommend that you turn that on. And I can also even allow certain apps throughout the day, the ones that I think she's going to need the most. Content and privacy restrictions are really important because it can also keep away any of that unwanted songs with explicit content or either explicit inappropriate pictures. I can also change this screen time passcode, and I can also just turn it off. Let's just go back up and let's look at downtime. So if I want to set downtime and I click on downtime, I got to look at my passcode. Oh, wait a minute. That is one thing you don't want to forget, the passcode for your phone. So as you can see, it's turn on downtime until scheduled. Right now I have this scheduled. If I turn scheduled off, that means that she basically, her phone has free range. She can do whatever she wants to on it. There's no downtime, there's no lock. If I schedule, I can actually custom my days or do every day. For example, if I feel like on Tuesday that I think, okay, she can have back a little bit of time, I'm going to have her studying tonight. So I want to kind of lock her phone down till about 7:15. I can change that to 7:15 p.m. And now her phone will be locked down until 7:15. She's only going to be able to access whatever apps I have allowed her to access at this time. Notice you can have block at downtime. This is important because if this is not turned on, the block at downtime, as you can see, I'm turning that off and turning that back on. Blocking that at downtime means at 7:15, her phone will completely just kind of like go dark. Not literally go dark, but certain apps on her phone will no longer be accessible. And when she tries to access those apps, it will actually show a little kind of a little sand hourglass saying you're on screen time. Please ask for more screen time. So that's basically being able to turn it on and off. Parents, this is what I think is great, is because your child is at school from 7:45 to 2:10 or 2:30, whatever the schedule may be. Turning their phone off between those hours would solve a lot of problems, trust me. App limits. So here's where, as you can see, I have one limit here. I can actually add whatever apps I want to have a limit. So I added this one for Miley: Snapchat, Instagram, and any social media, 1 hour a day. That's how much time I want her to have on social media. And after that, once that 1 hour is up, notice I have block at end of limit turned on. Once that hour is up, she cannot access social media any longer. I can go and add limits, however how much I want. I can either add it for all apps and categories, and that means everything on her phone other than the ability to make a phone call will be to whoever I wanted to make the phone call to will be shut down. I can also maybe just say that, okay, I want to only do games. I only want her to be able to play, let's say I go back to, let me not do games. Let's say I go back to education. I want her to only be able to look at or entertainment. I don't want her to be able to watch Disney or listen to music or Amazon or Hulu. I only want her to only have maybe 2 hours a day set to be able to watch those. So I can basically put whatever apps I want her to have access to and whatever amount of time that I want her to have that for. So you can basically set whatever apps you want and create your own kind of app list. Now, let me just pause for a moment. I probably should have said this at the very beginning. When we're talking about screen time, we did just hear a lot about, giving our children the opportunity to kind of grow in that adolescent space, kind of give them that opportunity to make good decisions and make good choices. Putting locks and limits on screen time is not to negate any of what's been shared with you. It's not to try to be that helicopter parent and control every single thing that they do. And maybe this is my own personal philosophy, but there is something to be said about the adolescent brain between 11 and 14 or 10 to 13 or 15, whatever this age limit that people talk about. There is something to be said about that prefrontal lobe, this part of their brain where it's supposed to make those good decisions, those good choices. It's not always the greatest. So being able to put screen time allows you, and your child best. Everything does not, what I do for my children does not work for someone else's children and vice versa. So your child the best, what limits that may be available to them or what should be available to them. So have this conversation with your child, show them the screen time, sit down and say, what do you think? Is this something that you feel like I need to set? You can still have it set and not block everything down. And then just every week, look at the graph and see, are you spending too much time? You would be surprised when a teenager sees that they spent 8 hours on their phone and they're in school for 6 or 7 of those hours. That's 15 hours a day. There's only 24. How are they sleeping? What else are they doing besides school and their phone? So just have those conversations. I feel like I needed to kind of interject that. So getting back to screen time, let's look at communication limits. This is probably more important that I would say for our elementary kind of age students or late elementary, is looking at who they are communicating with, right? I mean, again, during school hours, I can't tell you how much that would take away if they weren't able to communicate with friends during the school day. Then there wouldn't be that issue if they had their phone out in class, or there's a referral or the tension for that. So being able to kind of maybe set that down, and I can say during downtime, I can set where whoever I only want her to be able to communicate with specific contacts. So I can put her emergency people that I only want her to be able to contact with during downtime, meaning like during the school day, if I set the time from 7:45 to 2 o'clock, she can only contact me and her dad, or maybe her immediate family members, not her friends. So I don't have to worry about her texting in class. During screen time, I can also do the same thing for screen time. I can also manage Miley's contacts if I wanted to make sure that she didn't have people in there I didn't want her communicating with. So this is another area where you can just kind of oversee that until you feel more confident about the decisions that can be made. Communication safety. Again, this is a fairly new one. This checks for sensitive photos. Now, I did go and read a little bit about the Learn More. This does not share any information with Apple, but what it does is if your child is sending or receiving photos that show any type of nudity or inappropriate images that are coming through, we will automatically flag that photo. It will basically blur it out, and then it will give a warning. You are receiving inappropriate information, please contact, and it will give them a list of an adult, a parent, or someone they can contact if they are sending and or receiving sensitive photos. So you may want to go yourself and kind of look at that and read a little bit about that, Learn More, but it does not share any information with Apple. Of course, I'm taking just what the website said. So going back, let's look a little bit at always allow. This is basically what it says. If I want to allow, so currently right now, everything here in this top list are apps that I have always allowed as of right now. Down at the bottom, if I scroll down, and basically I think I got everything allowed right now. But let's say I didn't want everything allowed. Let's say that I did not want her to be able to have Netflix allowed all the time. I would just delete that and remove it. And then obviously it puts it, what's going to happen is if I scroll down, these are the apps that are not allowed all the time, right? So I can add anything up there if I want to add something. If I want to say, okay, I want you to be able to have Pages, then Pages moves back up here. As you can see, if I scroll back up, Pages will be up here, and it's actually one of the apps that now she can access all the time. So you can choose which apps that you want someone to have access to without it interfering with any screen time that you've locked down. Because let's take it, Google Classroom or anything that, calculator, anything that you want them to have access to 24/7, then they would have access to this. I also want to keep in mind, I can take away messages, right? So if I don't want my child to be able to have messages all day long, I can remove that. Notice it comes up with this messages. If messages is not always allowed, Miley's device will not be able to send or receive messages during downtime. So it does give you that warning. But again, it's only during the time. If it's during downtime and you have it blocked, then that means messages will not be allowed. Just as a person who works in the school system, sometimes that is very helpful. Going back to content and privacy restrictions. This one I strongly suggest too. Again, keeping in mind what you feel is needed for your child. iTunes and App Store purchases, you can determine whether you want them installing, deleting, or in-app purchases. I don't know, maybe you have a child who constantly is buying stuff and they're part of your family sharing plan. You can allow that if they need to buy something, they always have to have a password from you that you put in. So you can either allow them to purchase things or not. Allowed apps, again, I can allow which things that I don't want them to have access to just by turning things on or off. Okay, so maybe I don't want them listening to music during the day at school, so I can turn that off if I want to, allow those. So you can go through here and see which ones you think best fit for your family's need. The content restrictions is probably the one that's most important, I think. You want to make sure if your music, podcast, news, and workouts, or you want them listening to clean information or explicit. Explicit obviously is going to allow lots of different swear words, lots of different videos, inappropriate material is going to come through with explicit. Same thing with music videos. You may not want them watching music videos, so you can turn that off or on. Movies, PG-13, maybe they're accessing Netflix or some other movies on YouTube. You can put the rating, so you can choose which rating is best for your child. Same thing with TV shows, same thing with books. We do see a lot of students reading books online, so this might be a good area to go and make sure that some of that inappropriate material is not coming through at the wrong age. Apps, maybe there have apps. There are, ratings for apps for a purpose. Whatever you decide as a family is appropriate for your children. You can have where only certain apps they can download and or view on their phone. So you can set it to whatever age group that you feel is most appropriate for your child. Web content, basically this is unrestricted access. They have full reign to Google. Just my own personal preference. I wouldn't allow that. I would limit the adult websites. That does prevent students from going to some of the more adult websites, allowed websites only. You could check this and actually only put in at a website what website you only want them to go to. Limiting adult websites, like I said, is important. You can also never allow you can put in certain websites that you never want them to go to. And then down here is the gaming center. I'm not going to go through too much of this. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can go into your phone and look that up. But if you have a student who plays a lot of games on their iPhone or iPad, you can prevent them from private messaging people in different chat rooms, from being able to connect with friends that are outside of their friend contact list. You can decide whether or not you want them to be able to allow friends. Again, this is just if your child is into the gaming, then you can also set some parameters there. I will say the game center part comes handy in if your child plays a lot of Roblox. You may want to check into the information that's been shared about Roblox lately. There have been some inappropriate games created and then launched through that platform. There's always a way around everything, and I think some people have found that out. So there was recently just a situation where very inappropriate games were hitting students like 7 years old and below. So you can also kind of might want to look that information up. So there's the content and privacy restrictions. Now let me just go back up. As you can see, the activity. If I want to scroll through, I'm just going to go through last week's average. So right now up at the top, you see I'm looking at the week, right? So last week's is down 70% from last week. 1 hour and 53 minutes was spent on social, 1 hour and 19 minutes was spent on creativity, and 26 minutes was on entertainment. Her total screen time was 3 hours and 40 minutes. I can go down through the categories. Let's say I want to look at Netflix. I can see exactly how much time she spent on Netflix. I know this feels like a big invasion of privacy, right? But I will talk about that in a minute. Messages, how much, the notifications from last week. It shows exactly how much time was spent on each of these devices. I can go into by day and also look at this information according to the day. Actually, I don't think I have much in there let's look at Sundays. Productivity and finance. I mean, so it just shows all the different information of where it was. Now, this is what I want to show you too, the pickups. On Sunday, May the 1st, her earliest pickup was at 12 p.m. First pickup was at 4:19. Total pickups was 12 times, right? So it even gives you that information as to how often your child is picking up the phone. And I can, some of this to me, I'm going to be honest, was a little scary at first. I'm like, this is definitely a smartphone, right? There's a reason why they call it a smartphone. But then you also have this here at the bottom where it shows you the kind of the hot spots for the day. So this is really something, I'm not going to go through too much more of the activity, something you probably really want to check out for yourself and just kind of scroll through. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Serena.
You're welcome. I'm just want to I'm going to go back to sharing the teenager talk time, because I do want to just show there are 2 videos here that if you want to kind of go through those and watch those yourself, there's 2 videos that will kind of go through a little bit more in about 5 minutes or less, kind of the things that I showed you. And that is all I have about screen time. It's really a good tool, but again, it does feel like a big invasion of privacy, but at the same time, we are talking about adolescents who you've heard they have a lot of different changes and things they're going through. So having that conversation one-on-one with your student, your child, and letting them know what this is out here, and you guys as a family making that decision of how or if you want to use this this tool there.
Right, right. Thank you for this. And also thank you for showing this hands-on presentation on how to actually set it up on the phone. I think that's very helpful to be able to navigate this and know where to actually go on your phone to do stuff like that. There was one question in the chat. How do we know if our child has created another Instagram account or Facebook? Not sure about Facebook because I think they don't use that anymore. That's like for, people our age, but definitely Instagram or TikTok and all those apps.
Yeah, no, that's a really hard one because that's the problem with some of the things in social media about TikTok and Instagram is, a person can go out there and create 5 different screen names and you would never know. The thing about it, and unfortunately on screen time, it does not show you what screen name they are signing on under. That in itself is something you've got to really kind of have that very open, honest communication with your child about. And the next best thing to screen time is you picking up their phone and looking at their phone. What do you have? And I know that can be a tough situation. Sometimes that can be very, very a hard conversation, and sometimes that can kind of cause some tension between parents and their children. That I think that's just the conversations you'll have to have. Those hard conversations you have to have, but that is very hard, difficult. The quick answer is I do not know of a way that you can find that out other than your child, either you finding out by someone else or either your child saying that.
Right. And there we are back to communication and dialogue, right, with your child.
Right, and understanding our roles in our family. There's the parent role and there's the child role. So having that conversation between your family, what are the roles of the family and what are the specifics of that role?
Right. All right, I think with that, we are at 6:32. So I would like to say thank you again, Sara, Jessica, Malieek, and Serena, for all the great information that you shared. I think for me, at least, it was very informative and helpful